Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Empowered Career Woman podcast. My name is Cathy Telles, and I am your host and founder of this podcast. Thank you so much for joining me this Saturday morning. I have coffee in hand, and I'm ready to go to talk about this wonderful idea of being balanced. Actually, this week, how ironic this is such an important topic because these last couple of weeks I have been juggling with work and travel. It has been. I have to say I'm a little bit exhausted from all of the traveling that I've done. A couple weeks ago, I was in Seattle. I went live in Seattle on a Saturday morning. And this last past week, I was in North Carolina, and so it has been kind of tough trying to figure out, okay, how do I get my sleep in after, 3 hours, 3 hour time difference. That makes a big difference when you're not being able to sleep. It is tough. And so finding that balance is such a key thing in my life. And so it's just a timely thing for me that I'm talking about balance. I actually spoke with one of my listeners this week, and she shared with me how she's having to juggle life and family and kids and all of that. And how do we do that? And so that is today's episode, and I'm excited that you guys are here today. So thank you so much for joining. For those of you who don't know who I am, let me just kind of reintroduce myself. My name is Cathy Telles, and I've been in business for over 20 years. Earned my master's in business administration, and I have led and coached and mentored many different people all throughout my life, especially women. And for years, I've been thinking about this podcast and building it from ground zero. And so I'm finally taking the leap of faith and created this podcast for you, the listeners who talk to me about everything that's been going on in their life in regards to having to find balance. Like today's episode, how do you move up in your career? How do you, network with people? It's all of those different things that I've had to coach on, and not had to, but I've coached on and have mentored on over the years. So I'm just glad that you are here today and this morning on a Saturday. So let's jump into this topic of balance. As I said, I kind of struggled with it for these last couple of weeks because I've been traveling so much, and so even though I'm an empty nester, we still have a fur baby, and we still have to wake up early in the morning, and we still have to do all things for our baby. And man, it's even tough. Like, how do I got home, and there were very little groceries, like stuff in our fridge. And my husband has had to like take care of everything in the house, including our baby and our fur baby. And so he's working, he's in sales, and sometimes he gets home super late at night because he's been with clients in the evening, and he's had to try to juggle all of that. And when is it time to go do grocery shopping? So all of those little things can kind of pile up. So when I arrived home, I was like, oh my gosh, there's really nothing for us to eat. So guess what? I ordered in, and sometimes that's okay too, but you can't do that sustainably for a long time. I like to personally cook the food. I know what I'm putting into the food that we're eating. So I needed to do some grocery shopping. And so, anyways, balance. It is a crazy thing that we have to juggle as mothers, as women in business, um, as just life. This is what happens. And so I have a few tips that I want to share with you. And I feel like those are the tips that have kind of allowed me to um, go through life and communicating with my partner on the things that I need that's important for me in regards to balance. And so, first things first, I think tip number 1, it's really important. First off, really quick, thank you for those who are joining. Anybody here on joining me like right now, any of you guys feel that, balance is sometimes a struggle in your current life? Because I have to say, I hope I'm not the only one, because I know I'm not the only one. I know there are folks out there who actually go through what I am going through. So if you do, drop it into the chat. Would love to hear some of the tips and tricks that you are going through to overcome finding balance in your life. But for me, key thing number 1, it's okay for you to be number 1 in your life. And I hear me out again. It's okay for you to be number 1 in your life. And what do I mean by that? Well, oftentimes, us as mothers, as women, we tend to care for everybody else but ourselves. I'm guilty of it. I've done it. I've lost hair because of it. I've gained weight because of it. I've I wish I was the opposite. Like, when I'm stressed out that I stop eating. No, I'm the opposite. I'm an emotional eater. When I'm stressed out, I'm eating sweets and salty foods and all of a sudden I've gained weight and it's like, "Oh my gosh, I need to really hone it in and take care of myself." So, number 1 tip, it's okay for you to be number 1 in your life. Ironically, I was flying, these last couple of weeks. And when you're on the airplane, you hear it all the time, right? The flight attendant says, in case of emergencies, the mask will fall down. You put the mask on yourself first, then you put it on your child or somebody that is with you. So, why do they say that? Seriously, why do they say that? They say that because you have to take care of yourself first before you have to take care of anyone else. I mean, you can't help anyone if you take care of, your child first and you don't have the oxygen and then you lose, unconsciousness. So it doesn't make sense for you to take care of everybody else but yourself first. So that's what I mean about taking care of yourself first. Anyone hear this? I mean, I've heard this before, and it's great for us to kind of talk about it openly, because as mothers and as women in business and life, I'm telling you right now, we tend to take care of everything else other than ourselves. I'll give you a great example. I remember when I was early on in my career, I was moving up, and I really want to show my company that I was worthy of the next level up. I was dedicated, that I was willing to do whatever it took. And this is before I even had our daughter. And I worked so much. I worked almost 24/7. And back then, it wasn't a remote type of situation. I went in physically into the workplace, and I got there early. Let's say I started at 8 a.m. I would get there at 7:30, and then I'd close out supposedly at 5, but I'm there until 8 or 9 o'clock p.m. doing work. I don't know what I did. I don't know why I did it. I think in my head, as a young 20-year-old wanting to move up, or mid 20s, I want to move up in my company. I want to show them that I was worthy of the next level, and I wasn't caring for myself. And eventually that work really hit home for me. I actually woke up one day and I had like pockets of baldness in my head. I mean, like maybe 3 or 4 spots. And that was scary. I didn't know what that was. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm losing hair. but I went to the doctor and it was alopecia. And I had never heard of that terminology ever before, ever before. And thankfully, back then I had a lot of like thick hair, and it could cover some of those bald spots that I had. And that was a scary thing for me. And I realized then that didn't have to work extra hard for people to notice the work that I do. And, to be honest, I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know what I did for, 12 plus hours in a day. I don't know. Because now I can be more efficient even just in a 8-hour day. And I am, a- anyways, that was early in my career, but that is how the stress and not taking care of myself, that's what it did to me. And it hurt me. And it took months to recover. I had to put an ointment on my hair, and that didn't really work. And I think I had to take some medication on top of that. I mean, it was a thing. I mean, there were spots literally, and if I put my hair up in a ponytail, you could see the spots. And I didn't want to do that. So I just kept my hair down because I wanted to hide the pockets of baldness from that alopecia just because I wasn't taking care of myself. And so my number one tip on finding balance is you taking care of yourself. Number one, you are number one. Okay. Two, set boundaries. Oh my gosh. Setting boundaries, I think I've learned this even more so over the years, but setting boundaries for yourself, setting boundaries with your spouse, your significant other, with your company, those are, even with your kids, that is such a key thing for you. It's a key thing for me. Setting boundaries is such an important piece to this whole balance puzzle, because if you don't set those boundaries, trust me, everything will take over. So, again, another example, my daughter was highly involved in basketball, very, very involved in basketball. And she was in club teams, she was in travel teams, she was on her high school team. And so there were so many activities that um, took a lot out of my husband and I. I mean, we really had to juggle figuring out who was going to pick her up, who was going to bring her to the practice. And this is, I mean, she started playing basketball, I think, at 7 or 8 years old. So, I mean, we constantly, like, okay, we have to do this, we have to travel, we have to go through games. And sometimes these tournaments were all weekend long. And, you know, do we drive all the way to LA and then we drive back to where we live and then drive back the very next morning to LA for the tournament, or do we stay overnight? I mean, it was a lot to juggle. And so um, there were moments where I had to set boundaries, even for myself and with my husband and with my daughter. And that those are times when I had to really ask for support from the other basketball moms and say, you know what, I'm not able to bring her. Can she catch a ride with you? And that allowed me some time again to take care of myself. I mean, setting boundaries are so, so important. Even with work, I mean, this podcast is called Empowered Career Woman. At work, we feel like we have to give so much to our company, and it's okay to set boundaries. And I'm so fortunate, like the where I am currently today, they allow me that space. They know that I am putting miles and miles on my body as I do a lot of travel. And so, when I'm traveling and I get home at, 8 or 9 o'clock at night, the weekend before you guys saw me, I was in Seattle, still in my hotel room at 7:45 a.m. and doing the podcast, and I was still, there for work. When you're traveling over the weekend, sometimes you just need to decompress throughout the week, and it's okay to do that. Setting those boundaries and letting your team know, your boss know that I need that break, it's healthy. It is healthy. Sometimes people feel like they're afraid to share that, but you have to think about this. If you shared this with your boss, if you shared that boundary with, let's say, a workplace, and they don't respect you or that boundary, is that really a place that you really want to work for? Like, think about it. Is that where you really want to be? If they don't respect you and your time and your boundary. Now, don't abuse it, right? I mean, that's the thing too. Where I'm not abusing it. I work so hard. I think even now more so because I'm remote, I have so much time like working, and oftentimes I'm not even able to use the bathroom sometimes, right? Because you're so in back-to-back meetings. And so just setting that boundary for yourself. The other thing that I do for myself, because I'm remote, I schedule out um, breaks in between some of those meetings. And it's okay to have that 5 to 10 minute break in between those meetings so that you can rejuvenate yourself before you jump into the next one. And so I have to say, number two tip, set those boundaries for yourself. Set those boundaries with your spouse, with your partner, with your children. Um, and now one more story. I'm all about the stories here. I have to set boundaries even with my hubby, because as I said, I've been traveling for the last couple of weeks, right? And he knows that we are in this, we are in accordance with one another. But he knew when I got home, there was no way, even though I got home in time to be able to walk my dog in the afternoon, because we walk her right, right at dinner time. He knew how exhausted I was. He knew the rigor that I put my body through over the last few days. And so without even question, he walked her, and I didn't have to worry about that. But it's setting the boundaries early on that has built this connection and this understanding, which brings us to the point of number three: communication. Communicating with your spouse, with your partner, with your kids about where you are in relationship to like what's happening in your life and all of that. That is such a key thing to balance. They don't know you. They can't read your mind. Trust me, they won't be able to read your mind. Even if you come home and you look still fresh and they think that you're able to cook dinner, set the boundary and communicate that you're exhausted. Um can we get takeout for tonight? And that's okay. It's okay, because balancing your life, again, it goes back to that number 1. You are number 1, and you have to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, trust me, all of the other stuff won't matter if you're not healthy and you're not well. And setting those boundaries is so key, and by setting those boundaries, you have to be able to communicate that. And so communicating what your goals and your needs are. And for me, when I talk about balance and communicating with my boss and communicating with my team about my boundaries, I let them know, listen, I just flew. And you know what I love about it is that my team understands that, because they also go through the same rigor, and we are flexible with one another. They've been able to say, don't even worry about it, let's not meet today, why don't we meet next week? And it's great to hear that, because I hope I do that for them, and then they do that for me as well in return. But by communicating your wants and your needs, helps you with balance. I mean, again, this is all in this whole realm of communication, setting boundaries, and knowing that you are number 1. That is the key thing to finding this balance. This week, as I was telling you, I was talking to one of my listeners, and um, she's a single mom and having to juggle taking care of her child and driving into work, having to cook, having to do literally all things for her little family. And it's tough. I can never say that um, I've lived through that because I've never been a single mom. And so kudos to you, all you single mothers out there. You guys are rocking it and killing it. But as I was mentioning in even a couple of my other episodes, I mentioned finding your people is critical. When you have folks that you can count on, for instance, talking about the basketball with my daughter, right? I am so glad that we had a basketball family and community that we could reach out to because oftentimes if Paulo had to work, then I knew like, oh my gosh, how am I going to drive, our daughter back and forth to basketball and whatnot. And I reached out and asked for help. It's okay to ask for help. Find those people that would be willing to help you out, whether your kids are in dance, whether they're in basketball, whether they're in football, whether they're in whatever sports or in band, whatever that is, ask for the support. It's critical for you to find that group of people, your village that will help you, support you as you go through this. And anyways, as we were talking, I mean, finding little pockets when her daughter goes to her dad's place, taking that time to, hey, you know what? I'm going to decompress and maybe I do a spa day. Maybe it may not even be as extravagant as that. Maybe just jumping into my PJs and watching Netflix and this binge watching my favorite show and doing literally nothing. That's okay too. And so that is sometimes that balance that you need, decompressing and allowing yourself to have your space is really critical. And I know some people are like, well, how do I do that when I'm having to go back and forth and I'm have maybe meal prepping. One of the things that I have found with some of my single moms that I've worked with and I've connected with, they prep their food. And how smart is that? So when they get home, they don't have to worry about what am I going to cook for tonight? They already have the meals prepped. And so as we are busy working moms and just working individuals, women, sometimes we need that little bit of preparation to have it where it's much easier in the long run. So number 3, communicate with your partner, communicate with your village, your people, all the people that you need support from, and communicating with your boss and your team while you're at work. Like this is the stuff that I need support on. Guarantee you there are people here to support you. And then really, that's it. Those are like my top 3 tips. Um, I that those are the top 3. Anybody else on this, podcast this morning, I know that there's a few of you on. Do you guys have any other tips that you guys wanna share that has worked for you in regards to setting, boundaries and finding balance? How do you find that balance? Um one thing that I've been working on, and I really am having to work on this, is even just taking care of myself, exercising, finding that time. Like right now, my daughter is back to college. My husband, I mean, I try to do some Zumba. So, all my Zumba friends out there who's listening, try to take my Zumba classes when I can. But even going for a 15 to 20 to 30-minute walk in the middle of the day. I'm fortunate enough that I do work from home when I'm not traveling. And so sometimes just getting up from my seat and walking just to clear my mind. It doesn't have to be a power walk, but just getting up and walking and just getting that fresh air in me helps with balance, because when your mind feels that that you're in alignment with your heart and with your body, it goes a long way. Trust me. And so, with that being said, just want to say thank you for all of the listeners. I mean, I've had so much love over these last few weeks. I mean, this is really only my fifth episode. I'm still learning how to do this podcast thing, and I just want to say thank you to all of my listeners, to all of my supporters, for your love and support, and for giving me tips on ideas on topics that we want to talk about. So, um, this is our Saturday coffee, and I am just so happy that you're here with me. Please do not forget to share this podcast with other women and other friends of yours who you think that could be impacted by this podcast and the topics that we're talking about. And if you haven't already, jump down and subscribe, because you can actually get my 5 steps to success. I have a guide that has helped me through my career. If you haven't received that yet, go ahead and subscribe and get that 5 steps to success. So, kudos to all of you who are working so hard for making life happen for yourself and for your family, for juggling everything. Um, you are so important. You are worthy for having balance in your life. And I just want to say that I encourage you and I always lift you up. And I just want to say thank you for being here with me on the Empowered Career Podcast, Woman Podcast. So I will talk to you guys next Saturday. Actually, next Saturday is going to be my birthday. So I will be traveling, and I might not jump in at 8 a.m. I'm going to be going to the Hawaiian Islands. So I am going to be at a different time zone. So check out, I'm going to be posting later on today what time I'm going to be jumping on live for the podcast, but I will join in on my birthday next Saturday. So I thank you so much for joining me on this Empowered Career Woman podcast. Love you guys and have a great Saturday. Talk to you soon.